Welcome, traveler. Tonight, you're invited to descend into a forgotten corner of Middle-earth, a place no light reaches, a place even the wise no longer name. This is a tale whispered only in dreams and remembered only in silence. You will follow the footsteps of an elf unlike any other, Calenrûn of Dorthaneth, whose journey will take you far beyond the reaches of map and memory, to a gate sealed in shadow, to a city beneath sound, and to a truth buried deep in time. If you find yourself enchanted by the story tonight, don't forget to gently tap that subscribe button so you can return to Middle-earth again and again. Now, close your eyes if you wish, and listen as we step into the hollow roots of Thangol Dúr. The hollow roots. The rain had not stopped for 3 days, and the forest drank in silence. Deep in the northern reaches of the greenwood, where the trees grew tall as towers and the moss hung like breathless drapery, an elf stood motionless beneath a leaning oak. His cloak, the color of ash and river rock, dripped softly at the hem. His eyes, pale silver, gazed not at the road before him, but downward, toward the earth's swollen skin. Calenrûn had wandered farther than usual this time, and he knew it. The air here felt older, pressed with memory like old parchment, and the roots of the trees curled like sleeping beasts beneath the soil. He knelt slowly, brushing aside the slick leaves and pine needles, and placed his ear against the ground. A foolish ritual, some would say, but Calenrûn listened for what most elves no longer heard. Not bird call, not water's passage, but the hum beneath the world, the ancient breath of things buried and waiting. For many years now, his dreams had stirred with songless voices and cities without sky. Always the same cold light, always the same deep gate, carved in stone like onyx, veined with shadow. He had drawn it once in charcoal and forgotten ink, and when he showed it to the lore-masters of Lorien, they said nothing. Their silence had been answer enough. It was said that silence in dreams was the mark of the unnamed, but Calenrûn was not afraid. Not anymore. The dreams had come more often in recent weeks, sharpening in clarity, and now he could hear it. The sound beneath the soil. A thrum, soft as moth wings, but pulsing like a heartbeat. He rose without a word and followed, it stepping over half-rotted logs and ducking beneath tangled boughs. Time slowed as he moved, the forest muffling itself around him, each step quieter than the last. Then he reached it, an ancient tree, unlike the others. It stood blackened, but not from fire. Its bark shimmered faintly, as though oiled with shadow, and a thick knot pulsed near its roots, like the lid of a sealed eye. He placed his palm to it, cold, unnaturally so. The hum grew louder. He closed his eyes, leaning in close, and that's when he heard it, not a voice, but the space where a voice should be, like an echo with no origin, like the absence of sound, taking shape. It didn't speak words, it simply beckoned. Calenrûn withdrew his hand slowly. He looked around, but the forest had gone utterly still. No bird call, no wind. Even the rain had softened into mist. He knelt again, brushing aside the twisted ivy that had overgrown the base of the blackened tree, and there it was, a mark, faint and shallow, nearly erased by time. 3 curved lines intersecting at an angle that defied geometry. He did not know the rune, but his bones did. This was not a warning. It was a threshold. Something ancient lay below. Forgotten, yes, but not abandoned. And Calenrûn knew then that his journey had already begun, long before his feet brought him to this hollow place. He would follow the hum, the silence, and the dreams, even if they led him beneath the roots of the world. The map of rain. That night, the dreams returned with greater force. Calenrûn lay beneath a canopy of tangled limbs, wrapped in his cloak, as the last warmth fled the earth. But it was not the cold that stirred him. It was the weight of a voice unspoken, resting on his chest like stone. He saw the blackened tree again in sleep, but this time it cracked open like a mouth, revealing a stair descending into pale fog, endless and flickering with lights that did not burn. A song, older than language, hummed in syllables too slow for memory. He awoke before dawn, shivering. The forest around him dripped steadily, every branch letting go of its burden in rhythmic drops. The silence remained, thick and reverent, and his fingers itched with the need to move. Guided only by the dream, he gathered his things and walked north, though no road lay ahead. He walked until the canopy thinned and the mist deepened, until the sky cracked open above him and the rain returned. Not a drizzle, but a downpour, sudden and unrelenting. Calenrûn pressed beneath a crooked stone ledge that jutted like a sleeping jaw from the hillside, and there he waited, hood drawn low, watching the torrent reshape the land. And that was when he saw it, a shape, barely visible through the silver veil of rain, scrawled upon the stones opposite. The runoff had cleared a slope of its clinging moss, revealing beneath it the edge of something carved, runes, vast and curling, cut deep into the hill. He crossed quickly, boots slipping, and knelt before it. The lines were strange, not dwarvish, nor Sindarin, nor any form of Quenya he recognized. They arced like branches or veins, looping back on themselves. But as the water streamed across the stone, it caught in the grooves and shimmered briefly, and he saw them change. No longer mere symbols, they moved, not literally, but in suggestion, like a map drawn from memory. A twisting path through thickets and ravines, circling hills that bore no name, and at the very end, a spiral enclosing a point. He blinked once. It vanished. The moss, as if unwilling to remain exposed, began to cling again, curling like a shroud. But Calenrûn had seen enough. The markings, the dream, the silence in the ground, they were not disconnected. This was guidance. A map written not in ink, but in storm. He traced the path in the air with his fingers, committing its strange turns to memory, and turned back toward the forest's deeper reaches. The sky above moaned with distant thunder, and the wind began to move again, though it spoke in a voice like someone long asleep waking mid-sentence. Trees creaked and whispered, their leaves trembling as he passed. Once he thought he saw movement, a pale flicker behind a far-off tree, but when he turned, there was nothing. Only wet bark and hanging mist. By nightfall, he reached a clearing he did not remember from any map or song. At its center rose a stone, tall and thin as a spear point, covered in lichen and split down one side. It hummed faintly when he touched, it not in vibration, but in memory, as if echoing a sound long ceased. He lay beside it that night, and the dreams came again. But this time, they showed him not the gate, nor the descent, but a face, his own, reflected in a surface black, and trembling like water held in stone. And the face, it smiled, but the smile was not his. Black ivy, white flame. The morning came grey and without birdsong. Mist clung low to the forest floor, curling around Calenrûn's boots as he moved through the damp and hushed terrain, each step muffled, as though the world did not wish to disturb whatever still dreamt beneath the earth. He followed no road, yet he walked with purpose, drawn by the memory of the map revealed by rain. The spiral had etched itself behind his eyes, guiding his steps not with certainty, but with instinct, as if the forest itself was pressing him. Onward, time faded, hours folded in on themselves, light shifting without promise. He walked until the canopy above darkened, not from cloud, but from closeness, branches twisting so tightly that no sky shone through. The air thickened with moss and root, the scent of stone and water heavy in his breath. Then, like a breath held too long finally released, the trees broke. Before him stood a clearing not carved by nature, but shaped by some intention long forgotten. The ground here sloped inward, forming a bowl of earth and shale, and at its center rose a wall of stone. Tall, half-buried, and curved like the back of some colossal beast. Its surface was slick with age, covered in thick coils of black ivy that writhed gently in the windless air. Calenrûn approached slowly, feeling the shift. The quiet was deeper here, not emptiness, but suppression. Sound did not carry. The whisper of his breath vanished before it reached his ears. He reached out and brushed the ivy aside. It recoiled like something alive, and beneath it he saw the edge of a gate, tall, seamless, formed of a stone so dark it seemed to drink the light. Etchings ran along the surface, hidden beneath vines like bones beneath flesh. As he peeled back, more of the ivy, his fingers brushed something cold and he hissed softly. It was freezing, as though untouched by the warmth of the world for an age. And yet it did not frost. No mist curled from it. The cold was not of winter, but of absence. A void where warmth had never existed. He stepped back, watching. The ivy began to writhe once more, curling up the stone as if to conceal it again. But before it could, something shimmered, a line of pale fire traced across the gate in a shape he could not name, and then vanished. He blinked. Nothing remained. The gate was still, silent, hidden. Yet something within it had answered. Not opened, not spoken, but stirred. Calenrûn knelt in the hollow grass and placed his palm to the ground once more. The hum returned, louder now, vibrating through his skin like the echo of a voice remembered but not heard. He closed his eyes, and a word rose within him, not spoken aloud, but formed in thought. Thangol Dúr. He did not know its meaning, and yet he understood it. The dark gate, the secret door, a place sealed not with locks, but with memory, and only those who remembered, truly remembered, could pass. Calenrûn opened his eyes. The ivy was still again, the gate silent, but now he knew it was real. The dreams were not madness, nor mere fragments of forgotten song. They were calling, and he had answered. He would return, not tomorrow, not when rested, but now. For whatever waited beyond that stone did not wait idly. It had heard him coming, and it had begun to wake. Beneath the silence, he returned to the clearing before the sun had risen. Though in truth, the light above never reached this place, and time itself seemed stilled beneath the blackened boughs. The grass held dew that never dried, and the wind circled but never entered. As though afraid, Calenrûn stood before the gate again, ivy coiled across its height like veins on stone skin. And he waited, not with expectation, but with invitation. Eyes closed, breath slow, one hand pressed gently to the surface that once burned with white flame. Nothing moved, nothing stirred, and yet in that stillness he felt it, the breath beneath the gate, slow and sleeping, like the slumber of a mountain or the silence that lingers before grief finds voice. And then, not all at once, but like twilight, shifting toward night, the stone began to breathe, not with air but with memory, vibrating faintly beneath his hand in a rhythm that mirrored his own heartbeat. He did not speak, for speech had no weight here, only presence, and he thought not in words but in feeling, shaping his thoughts like smoke. "I remember," he whispered inwardly. "I remember you, though I have never seen your face." And the gate responded, not by opening, but by vanishing, as though it had never been, and only the idea of it had lingered in the mind of the earth. Before him now yawned a corridor of blackened stone, smooth and curving downward, lined on either side by pillars too tall to see the tops of, each carved with symbols not lit by torch or lantern, but glowing faintly in shades of grey and blue. Like moonlight remembered rather than seen, he stepped forward, and the sound of his footsteps died the moment they touched stone, swallowed utterly by the air. Even his breath, though steady, felt suspended, as though it too did not dare disturb the hush. Deeper and deeper he walked, descending along a winding path that spiraled like the map revealed by rain, the walls pulsing faintly with a light that came not from flame, but from time. Each symbol he passed seeming to shift slightly, rearranging itself just out of sight. Once, he turned his head quickly, trying to catch one in the act, but they remained still, quiet, content to pretend, under the scrutiny of eyes. Eventually, he reached a threshold where the spiral opened into a vast chamber, a city beneath the world, domed and hollow like the inside of a mountain, with bridges strung between spires of stone and glass, and below them a chasm that fell away into mist. Nothing moved, not air, not dust. The silence here was so complete it throbbed, a pressure behind the eyes, a kind of awareness that something unseen was listening, not from malice, but from memory. The structures bore no windows, only narrow slits and carved arches, and statues lined the walkways, tall, slender, faceless things that wore cloaks of mineral and bore no weapons, only open hands. And as he stepped into the chamber fully, something changed within him, not fear, not awe, but a hollowing, as though part of him had been drawn forward by unseen strings, pulled into the stillness like a drop into a well. And for a moment, just before the hum beneath the city resumed, he knew he had been here before, not in body, but in dream, in silence, in the spaces between thoughts where truth hides when no one dares to listen. Lanterns without flame. He crossed the first bridge in stillness, footsteps silent on smooth stone, breath shallow in the chill air that seemed not to move but to hover, waiting, as though the city beneath the silence listened more closely than it watched. Each step felt weightless, not from magic, but from absence, as if gravity itself hesitated in this place, unsure of its task. The bridge arched gracefully over the chasm, anchored between two slender towers, carved from a kind of stone he could not name. Grey, veined with strands of pale light, not glowing, not luminous, but seeming to echo faint memories of moonlight. Calenrûn reached the far side and passed through a high arch flanked by statues whose faces had been worn or never carved, long cloaks of stone folding around forms that felt both elven and not, as though made in imitation of something older. The building beyond was hollow, a large circular hall without walls, only pillars rising like tree trunks, holding up a ceiling lost in shadow, and between the columns, floating in mid-air, hung the lanterns, dozens of them, silent and unmoving, shaped like teardrops turned upside down, formed from crystal that shimmered like rain frozen in time. But within each, instead of fire or light, there pulsed a dim reflection. Of what, he could not tell. But each lantern seemed to hold the image of something missing. A hand unclasped, a gate unopened, a song that had never found voice. He stepped among them, and they did not swing or flicker. They simply hung there, anchored not by chain or cord, but by memory alone. One hovered near his shoulder, and as he drew close it flickered briefly, showing the silhouette of a forest path, overgrown and wet with mist. And within that path, a figure, walking slowly, wrapped in grey. He turned away, heart steady, but breath cold in his chest, and pressed deeper into the hall. There were carvings along the floor, curving lines like roots or veins, spiraling inward toward a dais at the center where a single pedestal stood, and on it a small object wrapped in black ivy, the same kind that had veiled the gate above. He approached it slowly, each step heavier now, as though the air around the object grew denser with thought, and when he reached it, he saw what the ivy clung to. A mirror, not round nor oval, but shaped like a tear, just like the lanterns. And its surface was dark, rippling gently, as though it held not glass but water suspended in grief. His hand moved of its own accord, fingers brushing the edge, and the mirror shivered. For a moment he saw his reflection, pale and still and framed in silver, and then it vanished, replaced by a face, not unlike his own, but older, eyes darker, mouth curved into a weary, knowing smile. The mirror clouded, and the ivy pulsed once before retreating, crawling down the pedestal like a creature denied. He turned slowly and realized the lanterns were dimming, one by one, as though their purpose had been fulfilled, and in their fading light the statues began to look different, less like monuments, more like sentries. He could not say how, but their posture seemed alert, as though something had stirred them from long vigil, and yet they did not move, not visibly. Only in the corners of his knowing did he feel their attention shift. Calenrûn stepped back, carefully, respectfully, and made his way to the opposite arch, where another bridge spanned the dark. He did not look behind him, not out of fear, but reverence, for he knew now this was not a place abandoned, but a place preserved, a place waiting for memory to return and fulfill some long-lost song. And whatever lay deeper within this city beneath silence, he had only just begun to awaken it. The mirrorless well. The second bridge was narrower, older, covered in a fine dust that clung to his boots like ash. No lanterns marked its span, only the low curve of the railingless stone path, vanishing into mist on either end. Calenrûn moved slowly, every step, cautious, not from fear of falling, but from the quiet certainty that if he did, no sound would follow, no cry, no echo, only a seamless vanishing into the silence below. The air here felt different, warmer somehow, though no sun could reach this place. He could feel it on his skin like breath behind glass, something watching, something close. Across the bridge he passed into another chamber, this one smaller, round, with no columns, only a low ceiling and smooth walls that curved inward like a hollowed shell. At the center of the room stood the well, shallow, unguarded, rimmed with polished stone, so black It reflected nothing, and within it, not water but something deeper, a liquid stillness, so perfectly calm it seemed to swallow the light, forming a surface like liquid night. He approached it slowly, footsteps muffled by the thick dust underfoot, and knelt before the well, letting his fingers hover just above the surface, not daring to touch, not yet. And then he looked in, expecting to see himself. But the well showed no reflection. Instead, the surface rippled as if stirred by thought, and an image formed, slow, dim, but clear. He saw a forest at twilight, trees bent with wind, and a figure cloaked in grey walking among them. It was him, or nearly so. He recognized the gait, the hands, the curve of the shoulders, but the face was different, not in shape, but in expression, carrying a weight his own had not known. He watched as the figure paused at the base of the blackened tree, the same one from his dream, and drew a long, thin blade from beneath his cloak, pressing it gently to the bark, carving something into the trunk. Not a word, but a symbol, the spiral from the rain-washed hill. Then, without pause, the figure pressed the blade to his own palm, drawing blood, and let it drip into the roots. The vision faded, and another took its place. This time the city, the chamber of lanterns, and in its center the mirror with its ivy veils, but shattered, the pieces strewn across the stone floor like black petals. Standing over them was the same figure, hand bloodied, mouth moving as though speaking. But again, no sound came. The lips shaped a word, and Calenrûn leaned closer, trying to understand, but the image blurred before he could grasp it. And then came the third vision, the one that did not move. It showed the well itself, as it now was, and him kneeling before it unchanged, as if the moment had folded back upon itself. But behind him, something stood, tall, cloaked in lightless grey, face hidden, hands clasped before it in stillness. He turned swiftly, breath caught, but nothing was there. The chamber was empty, still, the silence absolute. He looked once more into the well, but it was only stillness again, dark and waiting. He sat back, breath shaking now, not from fear, but from knowing that what he had seen was not future nor past, but memory lost to the waking mind, returned through dream and stone and silence. The city remembered him, or a version of him, or perhaps someone long dead who bore his name in shadow. The well had given no answers, only fragments, broken reflections of a story incomplete. But one truth pulsed clear. He had been here before, or he would be, or both. And with that knowing came a quiet resolve, as soft as sleep, as steady as stone. He would not turn back. There was still more to be seen, more to be remembered, more to be unearthed from beneath the hush. And somewhere, in the deep, someone waited. The eclipsed one. There were no doors in the city beneath the world, only thresholds, arched, open, shadow-framed, each leading not to rooms, but to moments, fragments of a place that seemed shaped more by thought than stone. Calenrûn left the chamber of the mirrorless well without turning back. The image of the cloaked figure burned gently behind his eyes, not with fear, but with a kind of quiet gravity. A certainty that it had not been watching him as an intruder, but greeting him as something returned. He moved now through a narrow corridor, curved and dim, the walls etched with fine spirals so shallow they caught no light, only the sense of movement, like wind through tall grass. The corridor sloped down again, ever deeper, until at last it opened into a chamber unlike the others, not vast, not cold, but circular and low. The walls close, the ceiling domed like a lantern turned inward. In the center stood a chair or something like it, formed of stone and root and metal, so dark it seemed carved from night itself, a throne without ornament, without crown, without judgment. And seated there, something waited. It was not a being, not in the sense of flesh or form, but a presence clothed in stillness, shaped like a figure yet undefined, its face hidden beneath folds of grey so deep they drank the space around them. The air around the throne pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat slowed by centuries, and Calenrûn stood just beyond its reach, uncertain, unwilling to speak. But it did not need words. The presence shifted, not in motion, but in awareness, acknowledging him, and in that moment something passed between them, not language, not memory, but recognition. The silence deepened, pressed in around them like velvet drawn tight, and into that hush, a single thought emerged. Not his, but given, like smoke placed upon still water. You have returned. Calenrûn blinked, breath shallow, but said nothing, only listened. The presence pulsed again, and the space behind his eyes filled with images, not visions, but sensations. The weight of soil, the scent of old ash, the sound of voices buried in sleep. And then a single word, shaped not by tongue but by silence itself, unbroken. He did not understand, not yet, but part of him ached with the weight of it, as if hearing a name he had forgotten he bore. The presence lifted its hands, long, pale, wrapped in linen as thin as breath, and turned its palms outward, not in offering, not in threat, but in memory. And upon each palm he saw the mark, a spiral carved inward, edges darkened, faintly glowing like embers long buried. The same spiral he had seen beneath the blackened tree, the same as the gate, the same as the map in the rain. You were not meant to forget, came the thought, softer now, like a whisper shared beneath leaves, but you chose to keep the gate sealed, to remain above, while the rest fell below. Calenrûn felt something shift inside him. Not a memory returned, but the echo of one once surrendered. He did not speak, but the presence read the question that stirred in his silence. What is this place? And answered not with words, but with stillness, an image forming in his mind of a city once filled with sound, with music, with voices that echoed through glass towers and wove light into the stones. This was Thangol Dúr, the presence said, the last refuge of the rememberers, the ones who carried what the world wished to forget, but when the world turned away, even we slept. Calenrûn stepped closer, drawn by the gravity of the presence, of its calm, of its sorrow wrapped in silence. And now, he thought, why have I come? The figure tilted its head, and in the stillness came the final whisper, because not all things buried wish to stay forgotten, and not all silence is peace. Then the chamber dimmed, the presence folding inward like mist drawn into the earth, and the throne was empty. Calenrûn stood alone again, but the echo of the voice remained within him. Not sound, not memory, but presence, etched into the space beneath his ribs like a scar, returned. He turned, knowing now that the silence was not watching him. It had known him all along. The stars refuse. The chamber of the throne fell away behind him, and the corridors stretched like rivers of dark glass, turning where they willed, leading not toward distance, but inward, always inward, as though the city had begun to fold in on itself. Calenrûn walked not with direction, but with surrender, letting the halls guide him, each step an echo not of sound, but of thought, familiar, haunting, weightless. And then the silence changed, not louder but deeper, shaped now by something buried. Behind the stillness, breath not his, slow and ancient, as if the city itself inhaled once every century. The light shifted, soft pulses moving like heartbeats along the walls, dimming with each step, until at last he entered a chamber shaped like a bowl of night. No walls, no ceiling, only vastness, framed by thousands of pale lights above. For a moment he thought them stars, scattered in silver and blue, but they did not twinkle, did not move. Each was fixed, perfect, and wrong. For they held no warmth, no shimmer, only stillness. Reflections, he realized, but not of the sky, of memory, each one a moment suspended, visible but unreachable, and among them one dim star, low, pulsing. And when he looked into it, the chamber shifted, not the walls, not the lights, but time. It folded inward, and he stood once more beneath the blackened tree in twilight, with wind stirring the leaves. But this time he was not alone. Across the clearing stood another Calenrûn, cloaked in grey, head bowed, blade drawn, and the moment hung there, frozen and weightless, until the other raised his eyes and met his gaze. It was him, and it was not. The same eyes, but clouded with knowledge, with sorrow. Calenrûn stepped forward, unable to stop himself, and the scene resumed. The other turned to the tree and began to carve the spiral, slow, precise, and then drew the blade across his palm, letting the blood drip into the roots, just as he had seen in the mirrorless well. But then something new. The other Calenrûn knelt, placed both hands upon the soil, and whispered words that did not reach the air, and as he did, the roots writhed, the ground trembled, and the tree pulsed with lightless flame, black and violet, curling upward into its branches. And then collapse. The other Calenrûn fell forward, breath leaving him in a single, soft exhale, body still. And above, the stars, real stars, winked out one by one, as though in mourning. The vision did not end, but shifted, time moving. Again, and now he saw the burial. The figure, wrapped in ashcloth, lowered into a hollow beneath the tree, roots curling protectively above him, and the spiral carved into stone to mark the gate. "You chose to forget," came the whisper again. Now, within his own mind, "You died willingly, to seal what should not be remembered." But memory does not rest forever. And the vision folded, shrinking, and the star above him faded, returning him to the bowl-shaped chamber of lights. But now fewer lights shone. Some had blinked out, some flickered like candles in rain, and he understood. Not all memories were meant to remain, and not all selves could return unchanged. He stood there for a long time, though no measure could name it, and he wept. Not with sorrow, but with stillness, the tears falling without sound, absorbed by the air itself, as if even his grief was welcome in the hush. He had died here once, long ago, and now walked again not as a stranger, but as one who had once sung this silence into being. The uncarved song. The lights above him dimmed as he left the chamber of still stars, and the path that formed ahead was unlike the ones before. Not stone, but root and soil and ash, pressing beneath his boots with the soft give of forest floor. Though no forest grew here, the air had thickened, or perhaps it was he who had changed, for each step now stirred more than dust. Memories rose like heat, faint impressions of laughter, of wind, of light on leaves, and voices long since buried, whispered not in words, but in tones, in fragments of melodies unfinished. And then ahead, the corridor opened into a narrow glade, impossible, for it lay beneath the earth, but real nonetheless, lit not by sun, but by the gentle glow of pale blossoms growing along the edges of a silver pool. In the center of the glade stood a stone platform, low and round, and atop it a harp. It was simple, unadorned, formed of dark wood that shimmered faintly as if soaked in starlight, and its strings hung silent, waiting, not from disuse, but from design. Calenrûn stepped forward, breath unsteady, for he knew this place not from memory, but from dream, from the songs that had haunted his sleep since childhood, the melodies he had never dared to hum aloud. He approached the harp, and as he did, he felt the silence tighten around him, not in warning, but in anticipation, as though every root, every stone, every echo held its breath. He knelt, placed his hand on the frame, and the wood grew warm, not hot but alive, as if remembering him. The strings stirred faintly under his fingertips, but no sound came, not yet. He did not know the song, but he did. Not in thought, but in being, for the melody was not learned, it was recalled, and so he played. One note, soft as a single drop of water falling into stillness. Another, slow and low, like the echo of something, sung beneath mountains, and the harp answered, not only with sound, but with memory. Each note unlocked a door in the dark, a shuttered window in his soul, and light, dim, ancient, sorrowful, spilled through. The melody formed slowly, as if grown from silence itself, a song without beginning, without end, shaped like a spiral, turning ever inward. As he played, the pool began to shimmer, and within it he saw not water, but faces. Dozens, hundreds, elves and not elves, figures cloaked in grey, watching, remembering. Some wept, some smiled, some simply watched. And then the final note. He struck it without thought, his fingers trembling, and the harp sang a tone so deep, so true, that the chamber itself resonated, the roots above groaning, the blossoms shedding petals of silver like snow. And in that note he remembered it all, not just the city, not just the gate, but himself, the vow he made, the sacrifice, the reason he had died, and why the silence had held him for so long. The song had not been sung to preserve, but to bind, to keep sealed that which could not be destroyed, a memory so terrible and beautiful it could not be borne awake. And now he had awakened it. He released the harp, which quieted at once, returning to stillness as if never touched. The blossoms dimmed, and the pool grew dark. The silence returned, but it was changed. No longer a hush of sleep, but of waiting, of decision, and he knew then there was no returning to who he had been. Not all songs are sung without price, and his was carved now not into stone, but into self. The song had not ended. It had only found its voice again, and the gate would open. The Silence of Thangol Dúr. He rose from the glade as one who had not slept, but dreamed the world anew. The harp behind him faded, its strings now still, the blossoms closed like eyes at dusk, and the light that had glowed faintly along the walls retreated, not gone, but folded inward, like breath drawn deep and held. The path before him was different now, straighter, cleaner, lined with memory rather than stone, and each step forward felt like a goodbye to something unnamed, something precious, The city no longer whispered but watched, its stillness no longer silence but reverence. And as Calenrûn walked the corridor that led to the spiral gate, he felt not alone, but accompanied by what he had awakened, by the echoes of all he had been and all he had let go. The gate stood open when he reached it, not broken, not breached, but simply absent, like a thought completed. No ivy clung to the stone now, no black vines, only a faint warmth in the archway where once there had been cold. He stepped through, and the forest greeted him, not with sound, but with breath, wind moving through the leaves as if sighing in recognition. The tree above the gate stood still, its bark dark as ever, but the knot near its roots no longer pulsed. It slept now, its purpose fulfilled. Calenrûn walked on, up the slope where rain once revealed the hidden path, though the markings were gone now, washed clean by memory made real. The air was different above, lighter, thinner, as if he had passed into the echo of a song rather than out of it. And as he crested the hill and looked out over the forest below, he knew he had changed, not in body, but in thread. Something within him had been unspooled and rewoven, memory and silence bound in new pattern. His name still lingered on his lips, but it felt borrowed, like the final note of a song that no longer needed to be sung aloud. In the stillness around him, the forest held its breath, and then released it, birdsong rising faintly in the trees, as though testing the morning after a long night of watching. He closed his eyes and listened, not to sound but to absence, the quiet within, and found there a peace deeper than forgetting. He would not return to the world as it had known him, nor would he seek to explain what could not be spoken. Some truths lived only in silence, and he carried them now, not as burden, but as being, and as the wind passed over him like a sigh through ancient leaves, the gate behind him faded, not hidden, not sealed, but remembered, and Thangol Dúr slept, again, until it was needed once more. Thank you for listening to the Silence of Thangol Dúr. If this tale has helped you rest, helped you dream, please consider subscribing to the channel. There are many more whispers waiting in the shadows, more journeys, more stories lost to time, more songs remembered only in silence. Sleep well, traveler, until the next dream.